Nathan Kimball and Nancy Hare, everyone. It's amazing. Our opening words this morning are in our hymnal number 437, to be read responsively. This is written by Ken Patton, whose daughter Clarice Patton is a member of ours. Let us worship with our eyes and ears and fingertips. Let us love the world through heart and mind and body. We feed our eyes upon the mystery and revelation in the faces of our brothers and sisters and siblings. We seek to know the wistfulness of the very young and the very old, the wistfulness of people in all times of life. We seek to understand the shyness behind arrogance, the fear behind pride, the tenderness behind clumsy strength, and the anguish behind cruelty. All life flows into a great common life if we will only open our eyes to our companions. Let us worship not in bowing down, not with closed eyes and stopped ears. Let us worship with the opening of all the windows of our beings, with the full outstretching of our spirits. Life comes with singing and laughter, with tears and confiding, with a rising wave too great to be held in the mind and heart and body, to those who have fallen in love with life. Let us worship and let us learn to love. And we will sing, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. It's number 126.
Risen for our unison affirmation printed in your order of worship. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ley. Este es nuestro gran pacto, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en el amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros. You may be seated. Good morning. I'm Reverend Annie Gonzalez, your acting senior minister, and I'm so glad to be with you all this morning, whether here in person or virtually on this sunny Sunday. This is the First Parish in Bedford, a Unitarian Universalist congregation where folks have gathered for centuries to figure out how to be more faithful, more loving together. And you are welcome here this morning, as always, whatever your theology, whatever your identities, whatever mood you may be in, or what is going on in your life, you are welcome here. I have just a couple announcements for us. After church, once again, as last Sunday, there are baked potatoes with fun toppings that you can obtain for a donation to Ukrainian Relief, and that will be in the common room. And then following that, at 1 p.m., there will be a Lyceum presentation, part 2, on the Ukrainian war and on ways to provide support from a Ukrainian American man. And so we strongly encourage you to come and join both here in person or on Zoom to learn more on part 2. Next week, we will be having another salon for us to discuss. This time we'll be discussing the possible revisions that are being proposed for the part of our Unitarian Universalist Association bylaws that have our 7 principles and 6 sources. And this part is called Article 2, and you can come and talk about it here in the Bacon Room after church or on Zoom after church next Sunday, February 12th. So please do join us. And another note that senior youth group will not be held at 2 p.m. today as advertised, but we are having a youth meeting after church that anyone is welcome to attend who would have been part of the youth group. And with that, I will turn it over to Linda Politz, who has some exciting things to share about our big chili cook-off from last night.
Thank you, Annie. And for folks who are on Zoom, you'll just have to take our word for it that the building still smells amazing. Last night, we had about 65 people that came for the chili cook-off. And I know, fabulous turnout. We had 16 pots of spectacular chili. And just such a wonderful multi-gen fellowship. An event that has been sorely missed during the pandemic. Now, this is also quite a competition, and so I am here to share the results with all of you. In the category of Best Meat, it was a resounding win by Mark Bailey. And a quick follow-up by Carla Bradford. And I want everybody to know the Bradfords contributed a quarter of the pots of chili last night, so there was quite a Bradford turnout. The best chili went to Jeff Bradford, who has been an attendee here for many years, with Henry Gittins coming in close second place. Way to go, Henry. Now, in years past, Richie Conrad has just burned people's lips off with his hot chili, but this year he had quite a contender. And I'm here to tell you that Bob Bradford took first place for the hottest, for those who still can't feel their lips. And guess who came in second? That would be Richie. The best youth, high praise to Henry. Everybody loved his chili. So well done, young man. And Best in Show goes to Mark Bailey, with Carla Bradford right on his heels. And I just want to thank everybody for this wonderful event. $593 raised.
Linda, thank you so much, and so many thanks to Jean, who not only hosted what sounds like a fantastic event, but also sent really good emails about it leading up, I would say. I would give that an award for best emails about a chili cook-off. With that, we will move now to our time for all ages.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
The story I have for you today is a favorite of Reverend Megan's, and I'm so happy that she asked me to tell it to you all today. And it is Somebody Loves You, Mr. Hatch. Now, Mr. Hatch was a tall and thin man, and he did not smile. Every morning at 6:30 sharp, he would leave his brick house and walk 8 blocks to the shoelace factory where he worked. After work, he would make 2 stops at the newsstand to get the paper and at the grocery store to buy a fresh turkey wing for supper. After supper, he read the paper, took a shower, went to bed, and then he got up and did the whole thing again the next day. He keeps to himself. That is what everyone said about Mr. Hatch. And then one day, Mr. Hatch stepped onto the porch and he got a surprise, a package wrapped in brown paper. He had never spoken to the postman before, but today he said, "Thank you, Mr. Goober." Mr. Goober smiled. "You're welcome. I always enjoy delivering packages." Mr. Hatch tore off the brown paper, and inside was a heart-shaped box, all satiny red with a pink bow on top, filled with candy and a little white card that said, "Somebody loves you." Only then did he remember it was Valentine's Day. And Mr. Hatch wondered who would send this to me. He was all alone and had no friends, but someone had sent him a valentine. He must have a secret admirer. So the next day, in a very lighthearted mood, he put on his best shirt and some cologne and picked out a yellow tie with blue polka dots. No one at work had ever seen Mr. Hatch in a tie or smelling of cologne, and at lunchtime, Mr. Hatch sat in the middle of the cafeteria, laughing and passing out chocolates from his heart-shaped box. On the way home, as usual, he stopped at the newsstand. Mr. Smith handed him the usual newspaper. "I think I'll have a pack of mints," said Mr. Hatch, not as usual. Mr. Smith was shocked. "Was that you who wanted the mints?" "Indeed it was," said Mr. Hatch. "I said I would like a pack of mints. And if you don't mind me saying so, Mr. Smith, you don't look very well today." Mr. Smith recovered from his shock and replied, "You're right, I don't feel very well. I have a cold. I was supposed to go to the doctor's this afternoon, but the stand has been so busy I haven't had the time." Mr. Hatch smiled and said, "Why, I'd be happy to watch the stand for you." Mr. Smith could hardly believe his ears. "You would?" "Certainly. Just show me how to do it." And so Mr. Hatch ran the newsstand for an hour. When Mr. Smith returned, Mr. Hatch made his usual stop on the way home at the grocery store. "I'm a little tired of turkey wings. I think I'll have a nice ham tonight," he said to Mr. Todd. Mr. Todd weighed the meat and wrapped it. "You look worried," said Mr. Hatch to Mr. Todd. "I am," said Mr. Todd. "My little girl is late. She hasn't come home from school yet, and I can't leave the store to look for her until my wife arrives." "Goodness, why didn't you say so? I will go look for her." And so Mr. Hatch walked to the school, found little Melanie Todd by the swings, and collected her home. "Oh, thank you," said Mr. Todd. "Any time," said Mr. Hatch. Time passed, and Mr. Hatch continued his unusual good mood, having impromptu neighborhood parties and generally having a generous and helpful disposition to everyone. Then one afternoon, Mr. Goober, the postman, came to his door with a very serious look. "Come in, Mr. Goober," Mr. Hatch said. "You look upset." "Oh, I am upset," he said. I made a mistake some time ago. "Do you recall the package I delivered to you on Valentine's Day?" "Yes," said Mr. Hatch, beginning to feel a little uneasy. I don't suppose you still have it," said Mr. Goober. "As a matter of fact," said Mr. Hatch, "I still have the box. So the candy is gone, but why do you ask?" "Well, I'm afraid I delivered it to the wrong address. It was supposed to go to another house." Mr. Hatch fetched the heart-shaped box and the pink bow and the little white card that said, "Somebody loves you," and gave it to Mr. Goober. Alone in his living room, Mr. Hatch said, "Nobody loved me after all." And he read the paper, took a shower, and went to bed early. The next morning at 6:30 sharp, Mr. Hatch left his brick house, walked the 8 blocks to the shoelace factory, and at lunchtime, he sat in the corner by himself. After work, he stopped for his newspaper at the newsstand, but he did not speak to Mr. Smith. And when he ordered his turkey wing from Mr. Todd, Mr. Hatch did not smile, nor did he pat little Melanie Todd on the head or invite anyone over for picnics. Everyone whispered, "What is wrong with Mr. Hatch?" Mr. Goober, the postman, told them, "Oh, but we love Mr. Hatch," insisted Mr. and Mrs. Dunwoody. "He gave us flowers for our garden and helped mend our fence." Mrs. Weed nodded. "Oh, I love him too. He saved his bones for my dog, Ruffy," and Ruffy barked. Ruffy loved Mr. Hatch too. Mr. Smith told everyone how Mr. Hatch had watched his newsstand so he could visit the doctor, and Mr. Todd told everyone how Mr. Hatch had found his little girl. And all of the children of the neighborhood remembered Mr. Hatch's picnics, and most of all, Mr. Hatch's laughter. "Poor Mr. Hatch," they said. "What can we do?" Then Mr. Goober announced, "I have an idea." That Saturday morning, Mr. Hatch woke up to a bright and sunny day. He put on his old overalls and went out to the porch to dust. But he couldn't believe his eyes. All over the porch were red and white hearts and pink bows, and there were boxes of candy on the chairs and yellow streamers flowing from the ceiling, and the front yard was filled with people, happy, smiling people, and they were holding a huge sign that said, "Everybody loves Mr. Hatch." Mr. Hatch dabbed a tear with his handkerchief. "I do believe," he sniffed, "somebody loves me after all." And he laughed and hurried to be with his friends. And on that note, I invite all of our young people to proceed from pre-K to 7th grade to the common room today for us to laugh.
Our reading this morning comes from Carter Hayward, who was one of the first women to be ordained to the Episcopalian priesthood in the 70s. She writes, "We are not automatic lovers of self, others, world, or God. Love does not just happen. We are not love machines, puppets, or strings of a deity called love, but rather a willing love. Love is a choice. Not simply or necessarily a rational choice, but rather a willingness to be present to others without pretense or guile. Love is a conversion to humanity, a willingness to participate with others in the healing of a broken world and broken lives. Love is the choice to experience life as a member of the human family, a partner in the dance of life, rather than as an alien in the world or as a deity above the world, aloof and apart from the human flesh. One of the many ways that we show our love is through our generosity. This morning, we have an opportunity to share the plate with an important organization focused on Ukrainian relief. And Rich Doherty is going to come introduce our Share the Plate speaker, who will be coming to us on Zoom.
Hi, Bill can pick me up on the mic. My name is Rich Doherty, and he says speak fast and brief. I can do brief. Fast is tough. Our Social Responsibility Council has a great responsibility for this community and this church. For the first offering, the offering on the first Sunday of every month, we share half of it with some organization. And through us, through our recommendations, the Social Responsibility Council has chosen an organization called Maria. I can't get that. But the president of that organization, which is a student-based organization in Boston from students from Ukraine, mostly graduate students, MIT, Boston University, have been raising humanitarian funds for almost a year now to support their fellow countrymen back in Ukraine, and they're doing an effective job, and we're sharing half of our plate this Sunday with them. And if everything works properly, Webb has Daria, who is the president of that organization, coming to us by way of Zoom. Is that going to work, Webb?
I think so. Find out.
And if it doesn't, I'll pretend I'm she.
Hi everyone, do you hear me? Yes. Oh my God, you do. First of all, I wanted to say that it's the most beautiful service I've ever seen in my life. The amount of love and friendship you are sharing is unbelievable, and we're so happy. You are so tied together people, and I'm just glad to be right up here right now. I'm a little bit overwhelmed. So my name is Daria. I was born in Korea. Now I'm studying at Boston University and pursuing a PhD degree, and I'm also president of the organization Korea, and I just realized it's unpronounceable for some people. For someone who does not speak Ukrainian, Mria means dream. It is named after the largest cargo plane that was built in Ukraine that was destroyed, unfortunately, by Russians. And the Mria, the dream, it represents a common Ukrainian dream for the freedom and sovereignty. From the start of the war, we have collected over $50,000 in humanitarian aid. Our main focus is humanitarian, medical supplies. Now, since it's beginning to look more heated on the eastern side of Ukraine, we are collecting over 200 combat application tourniquets. It's the device to stop heavy bleeding. We're also collecting money for power generators for mostly schools or hospitals, preferably hospitals in the villages where there's unfortunately not too much electricity due to these cell strikes. Operating rooms, labor and delivery wards, pediatric oncology, they all need electricity, they all need power. That generators are extremely expensive. They're heavy, but we were already able to provide 5 generators to the hospitals and 2 generators to the schools, which is a lot. I am so thankful that people trusted me, trusted one PhD student and joined our organization, and now you are supporting us. I am incredibly thankful for every cent, every dollar. I promise it will all go to the best use. It will go towards the saving of the lives. And thank you again. May God bless you. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Wow. So you know all those things that you said you wouldn't do until hell freezes over? That was yesterday. Did you do them? Well, I swore I would never bring my chickens into the house overnight. They are really fine outdoors in cold weather, like the wild birds with their 4 layers of feathers, and they all snuggle up. But their hen house is unheated, and it was to be the coldest night in my entire life. And so late Friday night, I found myself carrying them inside to our mudroom. And the temperature difference was 80 degrees from -12 outside to 68 inside. And they relaxed, and they shook themselves out, and they purred. Did you know that chickens purr? This sermon is titled Love Languages Redux, but it wasn't originally called that because of the purring chickens. It was called that because in community, we have to find ways to speak in tongues of love, as St. Paul reminds us. And that is not always as easy as we'd like. My step-grandmother was born in the Great Depression and grew up with butter that was actually vegetable shortening, and it came with little yellow packets that you mixed in. Anyone else remember or know those? Yes. This is common. Okay. Her parents were very poor, although I think it was just rations across the board for all. And also, I think they were alcoholic. And when I say my grandma worked hard from a young age, I mean it. She grew up to be a teacher, a science teacher, a single parent of 3 boys, and by the time I knew her, if she wasn't grading papers, scrubbing something, or fixing something electronic, she was probably asleep. She was simply always at work. Her personality was no nonsense and frugal, qualities I admire. I loved her, but I found her difficult to relate to as well. Among other things, she was a born-again Christian, and she wanted to save me. In divinity school, I lived in her basement for 3 years, and suddenly, out of frustration and curiosity, I found myself trying to understand her on a deeper level. One day at the local library, I checked out the book, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. I figured it couldn't possibly only be about lovers, and in many ways, it was not. I'm sure a lot of you have read it or get the general concept. It oversimplifies things for sure, but it was helpful to me back then, and it's been helpful many times since, when I've scratched my head about why it's hard to relate to someone. We may just be speaking in different tongues. The 5 love languages refer to the ways in which individuals feel and express love and affection towards others. These languages are words of affirmation, physical touch, acts of service, gift giving, and quality time. Understanding one's own preferred love language, as well as that of their partner or grandma, can lead to a stronger and more fulfilling relationship. They provide a framework for individuals to understand and communicate their emotional caring or needs within a relationship. Interestingly, our preferred ways of giving and receiving love may be completely different love languages. For a long time, I thought my grandma's love language was acts of service. She would anticipate that I needed to leave for school on time, and she would warm up my car while I was in the shower. Before that, she'd probably already have taken all our trash to the dump all the way across town, and fed my cat, and straightened all my shoes on the shelf outside of my door. Grr. I felt rushed and judged and late before I even swung my feet out of bed. What she wanted to be good at was gift giving, but she was awful at that. She would start in January and keep lists of what she thought we would love. And then at Christmas, we'd get hot off the press, new and updated Jesus videos every single time. I thought at first that in return, if I reciprocated with acts of service, she would feel my love coming towards her. But in truth, if I worked hard at the acts of service, shoveling the walk before she got up super early, and then later if I went to the dump, I was simply contributing to the family and making things work. It didn't land as love language in the way that she desperately needed. I needed to understand that what caught her off guard and melted her heart was my hug or a warm hand on her shoulder. She craved touch. Her parents never hugged her, she said. She was married briefly and then divorced. Her kids were boys, and since she didn't know to love them through hugs, they didn't tend to hug her. And so when I reached out to her, it was that mixed up vegetable shortening and butter pooling on the plate. An affirmation was so important to her, and yet that was the other love language, so touch and an affirmation, and yet that was harder for me to do sometimes because she was quite judgmental of me. And no one ever said that someone else's desired form of love is going to match with what we most like to offer. That's what makes it kind of tricky. But the awareness of what will reach the other person is key. And knowing what we long for or unknowingly expect helps mitigate so much disappointment. After fumbling about for a long time with my grandma, I finally figured out a perfect middle ground. What came easily and joyfully from me to her was also what she craved but couldn't ask for: a wide grin, my outstretched arms, and these words: "I love you, huggies." Her whole blank face would open like sunshine, and we were golden. And I'll never forget the year I needed a stole for Christmas Eve. My usual purple one was you guys gave this to me. My internship congregation gave this to me. I have a different one that's blue from you guys. And both were at the cleaners, and I remembered too late to pick it up before they had closed for the holiday. And so with a day and a half to spare, my grandma sewed me something beautiful out of old curtains. It's white, and there are 2 subtle golden crosses on the front, stitched with the tiniest stitches you will ever see. And she was so proud of her perfect gift. I wear it once a year on Jesus' birthday, and I remember my step-grandmother, how she loved Jesus and how she loved me. Gary Chapman writes that by prioritizing and practicing the love languages that resonate with both partners, individuals can deepen their emotional connection and improve the overall health of their friendship, their relationship over time. We certainly worked at tweaking it through the years. And that's the way with each and every one of the relationships we have with others around us. So would you try something with me? You don't have to, but if you want to, think for a moment of someone in your life that you spend a good amount of time with. It could be your partner, or a kid, or a parent, a colleague. Just picture their face. Okay, you got their face in your mind, if you're doing it. Now picture that they have just offered you something that makes you light up from within. What did they offer you? And if you want, just call out a few things. What did you want to receive? Someone in your life just offered you something that felt amazing. You can just call it out. Pillowcases? Someone made you pillowcases. And they feel lovely to sleep on. Thank you. Feeding them. A heating pad. Mm-hmm. A massage. Appreciation. A visit. phone calls. Sitting on a sloop. Scoop? A sloop. The sloop John B., right? One letter difference. Ron Green says, sitting on the sloop with your daughter and grandchildren. I'm catching up, Ron. Sailing on the sloop with your daughter and grandchildren. Now I can picture it. Marinated olives. Yum. A card. I missed one. Someone in the... Doing a task unasked. You and my grandma agree. So... This friend speaks of the love from her mother, looking at her and beaming her love.
Bringing over a new craft beer.
Bringing over a new craft beer. We're all coming to your house after. Yeah.
Having my coffee all set up for me in the morning.
Having my coffee all set up for me in the morning. Well, this could be the service itself, the entire service itself. This love is filling up the room. Thank you for each person who shared, and knowing there are many more that are floating around. Thank you for that. A couple of weeks ago, I arrived at church for the church cleanup, and I was quite late because my son Jesse had fallen asleep in the car on the way over, and I sat there in the car beside him for an hour, feeling terrible about my ineffective contribution to the collective effort. I think the date of the cleanup day was even my suggestion. And coming in the door, chagrined, I was swept up instantly in the engaged, happy energy. Kath Van Prague was way at the top of a ginormous ladder in the common room, cleaning the windows. And Alan McRobert was delighting in all sorts of mischief coming out of the closet in the coming out of the closet in the common room. Great, go for it, Alan. And sorting our fair trade chocolate on the table. He was so happy doing that. And George Epple, who always took care of that, well, he would have been happy to see that tradition continuing. Within 1 minute, my son Jesse, happily began spraying up a storm with his little squirt bottle, cleaning the kitchen cabinets 2 feet off the ground. Kath McCafferty had welcomed him in like a fire chief glad for backup help with the hose. Everyone had a job. And I looked at everyone hard at work, and I wondered what my job should be. How can I be helpful, I asked. The answer was simple, but it had not occurred to me. Do what you love, Kath said. Everywhere needs something. I love that. It was such an open invitation to use whatever love language I wanted to add to the generally well-functioning but constantly in need of upkeep microcosm that is our church building. My one job, really, then, was to know what would bring me joy to do. Anyone else hate those drips down the wall in every bathroom where people wash their hands and go like this before they grab the towel? I hate that, and it just is like little kind of still a little dirty, and it mixes with the grime along the baseboard. Ugh, it's so gross. So I hate that, and I was happy as a clam cleaning up the baseboard and wall mess in the women's room. For some time. And Jesse really could have helped me with his trusty sprayer, but he was bonding with his new best bud, Fire Chief Kath, in the kitchen. That looks awesome, buddy, she would say. You're doing great. Words of affirmation are definitely Jesse's most valued love language. He was purring. Martin Buber, the 20th century Jewish philosopher and religious thinker, believed in a type of love that he referred to as I-thou love. This type of relationship involves a deep and genuine connection between two individuals. characterized by mutual respect, empathy, and a sense of unity. Buber believed that in this type of love, one sees the other person as a unique and valued individual, rather than simply as an object to be used for one's own needs. In contrast, he described I-it relationships as those in which individuals view each other as objects to be used in some way, rather than as subjects to be respected. It's actually way more complicated than this. I reread his book, I, Thou, and just I really struggled to get my head around it, and each time I tried to pick a section to read aloud, it doesn't really work out of context. It just was so dense, I kept feeling like this about it. But the basic idea, I think, could be summed up in this way, that all actual life is encounter, every aspect of it. I require a you to become. Becoming an I, in becoming an I need you. All living, all real living is meeting. Buber said that meaning, oh my goodness, I can't even read my own words about Buber. He's so complex, but it is also so simple. He said meaning that life is essentially about making connections with others. Through these relationships, individuals can experience a sense of fulfillment and meaning in life. Buber also said that the only way to the thou is through the I. This highlights the idea that self-awareness and self-reflection are necessary precursors to true connection with others. Buber believed that in order to engage in authentic, meaningful relationships with others, we must first be able to understand and express our own thoughts, feelings, and experiences. Only through this process of self-discovery and self-expression can we hope to truly connect with others and experience the deeper sense of connection and fulfillment that comes from I-thou relationships. There's a song I like by the 90s band Bare Naked Ladies. Did I wake you up? I'm pretty sure that's why they picked their name, actually, just to get our attention every time. But they're actually pretty tame as a band goes with all their lyrics. Anyway, the song I like is called For You, and I love it because it reminds me that playing small or hiding one's true self serves no one at all. The lyrics go, in a book, in a box, high upon a shelf, in a locked and guarded vault, are the things I keep only for myself. It's your fate, but it's not your fault. And for every useless reason I know, there's a reason not to care. If I hide myself wherever I go, am I ever really there? Buber defined tragedy as two people of opposing views having insufficient resources to bridge the gap in their perspectives. He felt the life of dialogue, as he called it, is the core means of confirming another as a person, despite opposing views. In the I-thou relationship, the emphasis is on the present moment and the connection between two individuals. I am changed for knowing each of you in this very instant. You come to know yourself more deeply because we, all of us, exist in relationship. Each of us here can or has the potential to have a meaningful relationship with every single other person in this room. Our church is buzzing. It's buzzing as a hive of relationships. You just have to walk in the door to feel that. Someone cleaned the windows by hand, 20 feet up, so that the sun can pour through and onto all of our heads at community hour. The beautiful dance of offering our best and being open to receiving from others is where the soul of our congregation lies. We need to try not to tuck ourselves away, not in a book, in a box, high upon a shelf. We've got to make some half-decent form of chili and bring it on over. And when you know what your love language is, whatever it is, bring it here. Your joy is contagious, And after a global pandemic, we really need to reclaim that word. Contagious. And sorry, you missed it. And because I think this will help us all to voice it aloud, I offer one other thought about relationships. A big part of who we knew ourselves to be as First Parish left when John Gibbons retired. And if you are newer here, we are so glad that you are here. Give us 1 second, because you know better than any of us that there is a backlog of John-related feelings. And what we are just talking, and we are just going to talk about them for a moment, and all is well. We related in an I-thou way with John, individually, collectively, and with him as the queen bee of our buzzing hive, when we were in an I-thou relationship with First Parish and other groups. We miss him, and we are not the same without him. And we can't go back in time to who we were a few years back. Things are different in many ways, but we are okay too. We are so strong and kind and good. And we have 1,000 memories of the us that continues. We are a community that has had eras of being lay-led, and those were some of the most healthy and exciting in our history. In those eras, the concept of we are all ministers here really sunk in. As only one example, I have watched you show up for one another through an enormous amount of loss this winter, as we experienced many deaths in our community. Thank you, clock. The soup making, the sitting vigil, the cards and rides and phone calls. All the different ways of being here for one another and bringing our truest selves to the table through the years has created our shared history together. And like a repeating dance, we now know the music and can both lead and follow in turn. An I-thou relationship may no longer be actively present in our lives with John, but it can still hold significance and influence. That can be both useful or difficult, or both. This might seem like an odd invitation, but in your own time, over the next couple weeks, I invite you to mull over what, if any, specific love languages might have been present in your relationship with John. How did you communicate your affection? Who did he represent to you? Who were you in his presence? Be as specific for yourself as you can for your own sake. I say all this in part because grief is so complicated, and yet I believe gratitude is the stronger swimmer. But also, I think a piece of the interim process for all of us to do is to understand for ourselves what we might unawarely expect or assume or long for in a new minister, based on our experiences with ministers in our past. If we cloud the new relationship with expectations based on past experiences, we may find ourselves relating in an I-it manner by accident. We will be at our best if we can stay open to who the new minister might be among us, curious about what gifts they bring, showing up with our own gifts at the ready, but not yet assuming we know the best ways to be our authentic selves together. I watched Jesse on a seesaw for the first time on Friday. He had to follow the lead of a companion he'd met only a moment before. She modeled going slow, so no one was thumped down, taking turns pushing off from the ground and using eye contact to check out the other's intentions. Jesse was almost in a trance as he learned, joy spreading quietly across both their faces in tandem. Up and down. It's working. You are tending to me, and I am tending to you. And now I am trusting you. and you are trusting me, and this is fun. It was the most beautiful dance. The duets we are still hearing this morning from the Kimballs remind, and Nancy Hare, different last names. Sorry, Nancy, that happens a lot. The duets this morning remind us that all our lives we are cultivating I-thou relationships. We can try it out, love language in all the different ways, like Mr. Hatch did with sharing the chocolates he'd been given, or dropping off flowers, or going out to find a lost little girl. He was sort of up for trying everything. So changed by being loved, he was ready to love. In the context of our church community, this means fostering a culture of respect and empathy where everyone feels valued and needed and heard, where we look at each other in the eye and say, wait a sec, start over. I didn't get that right yet. Let me listen better this time. Whether it's through Sunday services, small groups, or volunteering, Buber says, all real living is meeting. Love and connection with others is at the heart of human experience. All life flows into a great common life if we will only open our eyes to our companions. At the end of the day, here we all are, just kids on a seesaw, friends at the chili cook-off, just us chickens, showing up to scratch and peck and purr. May it be so. Amen. And we will sing Let It Be a Dance, number 311, introduced by Brad.
So where I came from, it wasn't a seesaw, it was a teeter-totter. Right? Anyone else call it a teeter-totter growing up? Yeah. So it's been a long time since we've done the next hymn, page 311 in the gray hymnal. It's a long hymn and we don't want to make it longer. So I'm going to play the first page as the introduction, and then we're going to sing it all the way through. But rather than getting to the end and going all the way back to the beginning, we're only going back to that second page. You'll see it makes a lot of sense rather than just doing that first page over and over. You'll pick it up. So let's stand up in either body or spirit and sing page 311, Let There Be a Dance.
Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple, all space. Its shrine, the good heart. Its creed, all truth. Its ritual, works of love. Its profession of faith, divine living. May it be so. Amen.